Hey everyone, it's Cathy, and welcome to the Meehan Mission podcast. I am so excited for you guys to hear the podcast today. I got to interview Dr. Stephen Baker. He's a chiropractor out of the state of Idaho, and you are going to love his views on things like vaccinations and what about Fauci. So sit back and enjoy, and thanks for joining us. Hey everyone, welcome to the Meehan Mission podcast. It's me, Cathy Meehan, and today I am super excited because I was scrolling through Instagram and I came across Dr. Stephen Baker, who I'd already heard of, and I was like, I need to get that guy on a podcast. So welcome to my podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
You are so welcome. Well, one of the things that I absolutely loved is I feel like we have some similar thoughts and, as far as medical corruption might go, or how we really think that patients need to use more natural, holistic things for, being cured, or really just like preventative medicine and that type of thing. But I was hoping that you would give just a quick introduction to the people that watch our podcast on, who you are, Dr. Stephen Baker, and what you do for chiropractic care.
As far as what I do online, I talk a lot about two things really: vaccines, and nobody really likes that. Well, they either love it or they hate it.
Yeah.
And then talk about how the body heals, and because ultimately that's the number one thing to understand is your body can heal itself, and it does that all the time, whether you realize it or not. And the power that made the body heals the body, and it doesn't need any help, but it can't have any interference. And so if people really just understood that one concept, and from that, you would go, oh, that makes sense to not vaccinate, or that makes sense to eat a certain way. It makes sense to get adjusted. So that's the number one thing I try to teach people. But most of what people want to see is either me talking trash about vaccines or the narrative or the establishment.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah. So speaking of, what do you think about Fauci?
I did a couple of videos, like some fake, joke videos of me pretending to interview Fauci. It was pretty fun. I think that RFK should find him and just, do whatever's fair.
I said they get in a ring and punch it out. Really, that's what I would like to see,
I think if the guy,
I'm not
if the
against
guy that wrote an entire book, which RFK wrote the book, The Real Anthony Fauci, if you know enough dirt to write a whole book, like, you should probably pursue prosecuting that guy. That's what I think should happen.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Or the fact that Fauci hasn't come after, Bobby Kennedy for slander or anything, because he knows that everything in that book was true. So that's always, so if anybody hasn't read that book yet, I highly, highly recommend it. It's a real eye opener.
If you don't want to read the book, then there's also a DVD out, The Real Anthony Fauci on video.
Yes, even for those people that prefer DVDs, I'd go that route too. So, but yeah, absolutely. And then also you talk about how vaccinations. So, my husband, Jim, that's really where we got launched into the whole medical freedom was shortly after Vaxxed came out, the documentary exposing the CDC whistleblower, Dr. William Thompson. And Jim came out because he was one of the few doctors that would speak out against the childhood vaccination schedule. And, it really is it's a deep dive for people and new parents, especially, to, really dig into there and see that, they don't have adequate studies. There is no saline placebo comparisons for their studies. And, how do you approach parents that, are maybe they're already vaccinating or they're thinking about not vaccinating any longer? Where do you start? Because the volume of information is overwhelming.
I usually start by asking a question: do you understand what you're vaccinating for? For example, like polio, I would say, do you understand how you get polio? And most of the time a parent's going to go, no, how? I say it's fecal oral, which means you have to get literally feces in your mouth in some way. Like, what? And then immediately they start to go, well, then why? So I found that asking questions is the best way to communicate in regard to vaccines because vaccines is a borderline religion for some people. It's not a topic that you can necessarily talk a lot of logic into some people. So asking questions allows them to think about something and realize that they either don't know the answer or that's a question that prompts like it's wow, that makes sense. And it opens up something for them to think about instead of me just jamming what I know down their throat, which is what most
Yeah.
people in our camp do. I know this, you did, and then a person just does this. So asking questions is how I approach it with every parent.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I always wished that when my kids were growing up, if I just had one person ask me, "Do you know what's in a vaccine?" I mean, I would have stopped right there and started researching because I grew up thinking it was, some saline solution and a little bitty piece of virus. That's what I thought. And but no one ever even planted the seed for me. And I just feel like, that's my goal is I just plant seeds. And I guess it would be like, asking questions is like, before you vaccinate, you might want to research, do you know what's in the vaccine? So, but I like your approach on, do you know what you're vaccinating for? That's a great approach.
Well, when we talk about what are you vaccinating for, the next point is looking at the statistics. And most parents you talk to, most of them didn't get their kids the COVID vaccine because they looked at it and they go, hey, listen, less than 1% of kids that ever get COVID would ever die from it. And actually less than 1% of kids even got COVID. And so there's such a few number, we wouldn't vaccinate for it. And so once you're at a point where a parent agrees to that or establishes that that's the reason why they didn't give them the COVID shot, when you look back at every single childhood vaccine, I looked at all 16 of them. I broke them into chickenpox. So if there's three, there's DPT, broken into diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis. But as I look back at every one of them, I look at the peak incidence right before the year the vaccine came out. Coincidence or not, highest number of infections right before they needed to sell a vaccine. And even at that point, when you take the total infection versus the population size, they were all less than 1%. So with every single vaccine in the history, and it's in the childhood schedule, without getting that vaccine, we still have less than a 1% chance of even getting the infection, let alone dying from it is even less than that. So all of them have the same odds if you look at it. And then the question has to become, is that even worth the gas money? Because whether I believe in safety of vaccines or not, or forget about the ingredients for now, are you even why are you even going anywhere if you have a 0.05% chance of even getting it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's because the pharmaceutical companies have, used propaganda so that they can vaccinate everybody and make the money on that. But talking about the COVID vaccine, I mean, I am livid that it is on the childhood vaccination schedule starting at 6 months of age. I mean, that to me is ludicrous. I mean, any pediatrician that is giving a child or a baby at 6 months the COVID vaccine, they deserve to be thrown in jail and tried for attempted murder. I think it is absolutely ridiculous that it's even on the schedule and people even think about it.
Do you know why it has to be on the schedule?
Oh, probably so they avoid the liability issue.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So
For
for anybody
liability.
listening that doesn't know about that, the 1986 Childhood Injury Act is something that Fauci
Mhm.
actually asked Reagan to sign. And when he
Mhm.
signed it, what it did was it made it so that vaccine manufacturers were not liable. So if I vaccinate my child and my child has a problem, I can't sue the vaccine company. I have to go through a special court system in the government, which is very hard to get into, nearly never
Yeah.
win. And still, since 1986, they've paid out over $4 billion in damages. So anyways, um, that's the only way to go about even dealing with it if there's an accident now because of the 1986 Childhood Injury Act. When the COVID shot
Yeah.
came out, it was in the emergency use authorization. Therefore, there was no liability there. Once that
Right.
ended, they needed to put it under another liability shield. And so that's why they put it into the childhood schedule.
Yeah. Absolutely ridiculous. I mean, and again, that's a whole nother rabbit hole to go down as far as that's concerned. So there is all this corruption. So what like woke you up to the corruption? Or I mean, were you raised like naturally minded and a chiropractic family, or how did you get on the path you're on?
I used to eat Lunchables and go to McDonald's.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
my mom said that she was a bad mom and she didn't take me to all my pediatric visits, so I didn't get all my vaccines. So it turns out she was actually a great mom. Um,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
I'm sure I have some vaccine damage. I'm sure that I've got some McDonald's issues. I started getting adjusted when I was 12, but I thought it was just about, get my back cracked so it didn't hurt anymore. But looking
Uh-huh.
back, like if I ever got a cold, my buddies got a cold, I'd beat it in a day. It took them a week. Um, After football injuries or working out really hard, I just seemed to recover way faster. And I didn't realize at the time, but that's because I was getting adjusted. My body was healing and functioning at a higher level than theirs. And
Yeah.
so I didn't
Yeah.
know what I wanted to do. And people always ask me, why'd you become a chiropractor? And I go, chicks and money. Like, why else would you do it? But really, I saw my uncle. He was a chiropractor. He loved what he did. He made great money. Got to set his own hours. Seemed like he truly helped people, and so I just went for it. I didn't understand that much about it, even going into school. But then you start seeing different things. Start seeing changes in patients. I had a really powerful story with my son and his birth. I'll share with you sometime if you want. But you see all these different things where chiropractic it just changes everything and or saves lives. And so you really get anchored to and understand the power of it. And then that's why it becomes so consistent in every part of the message. But getting into it wasn't some life-changing result for me. It wasn't anything like that. I just didn't know what I wanted to do, and that made the most sense. And it's been one of the best decisions ever.
No, that's absolutely great. Well, I know we have a functional medicine clinic. It's telemedicine, MeehanMD, and then we've also just launched our Mindset Kids. But we refer people to chiropractors all the time. I mean, we stay away from, a pill for every ill, and we really believe in body work and adjustments, and there's just so many things that are available now that a chiropractor's office can offer. And, we love to steer people in that direction because we believe in holistic healing. I mean, that's what mindset, microbiome, inflammation, nutrition, detox, sleep, exercise, and then total hormone balance, which is, holistic care, which you guys, fit those needs, which makes it good and cohesive for us. So question, uh, I like to talk about kids and pediatricians, and I saw you had Paul Thomas on the other day, and up on your Instagram post, and he is actually working with us as an advisor for Mindset Kids. Because just a little history behind that, Jim, my husband, was out, speaking the rounds and telling medical freedom groups about, the dangers of vaccinations and masks and COVID and everything. And we hooked up with Dr. Paul Thomas, and we kept saying, when is somebody going to create something so that pediatric patients don't have to go to a pediatrician's office anymore? It's like, when's somebody going to create something? Because if I personally believe, and I'm sure statistically, if we could keep kids out of the pediatrician's offices so that they don't have to get their, injections and a pill for every ill and an antibiotic for everything, I think that would help, create a healthier population. So we did finally launch Mindset Kids, which is a telemedicine pediatrics for people that don't want to go to a pediatrician's office. And then we work with people in states. So for example, like your state of Idaho, when we have a patient that signs up from Idaho, then we'll be able to refer them to you so that you can, especially when they want, in-person visits and that type of thing. So I'm looking forward to, developing some things where we can collaborate. And I think that will be very beneficial. Really, our goal is to, let's start saving kids one kid at a time, and just also educating parents. I mean, it's very important that we educate, which I'm sure you agree with that, educating parents on alternatives to, where they're going right now in the pediatrician's office.
The majority of the times when a baby is born in a hospital, they literally grab the baby by the head, turn and pull. We, I believe, currently are 53rd as a country in neonatal mortality, meaning it's safer to have a baby in 52 other countries before the United States. So
Yeah.
So I think that there's a problem with the system as it is, that from the very beginning, where a child is pulled out of the mother by the head. If you can imagine being drugged by your head, you would know what that would do to your neck and your back. And
Yeah.
then vaccinated on day one with vaccines and vitamins, big air quotes, that they don't need. Then oftentimes not breastfed, fed formula with high fructose corn syrup and potentially heavy metals. And then starting at 2 months old, 4 months, 6 months, a year, 18 months, being injected with things, regardless of what they are, they're unnecessary, but they're immune suppressants. And then every time that they get an ear infection, which is a side effect of the vaccine, that they have to give them antibiotics. And once the antibiotics have wrecked their gut, it's lowered their immune system. Now they've got the green snot coming out their mouth all the time. Their eyes are always watering. They're coughing. They look sick all the time, but now they need some other medication, some other cough syrup or whatever else. So it just feeds them into the system. And then eventually that leads to an autoimmune disease or some other chronic issue down the road. And then they have a lifelong customer. So that's basically how it works from birth up until they're kids and teenagers, and then they're hooked. And like the system has them. Because the healthcare system isn't designed for health. It's designed to keep you sick. So
Absolutely.
I'll just pause for an amen on that one.
Amen.
I think that it's ridiculous that parents would go and get their children's mouth checked as a routine protocol as a parent with your children versus having their spine and nervous system evaluated, since that's what controls their entire body and every aspect of function. So I don't think a child can actually be truly healthy without chiropractic care, because you can't have a less than fully functioning nervous system and expect to have a fully functioning body. It doesn't exist.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and I just, that's probably one of the biggest hurdles that I try to get over is maybe we live in a bubble. I don't know what it is, but you and I think alike, where to me, it's common sense that you don't inject foreign things into a child. Just starting from there. That's the baseline for me is, of course, I'm never going to, always research your vaccines, whatever, politically correct. Don't tell anybody not to vaccinate, but I don't vaccinate. My grandchildren have never been vaccinated, and they are healthy as all get out. They see chiropractors. They do, all of the great stuff. But I just don't understand how, if you want to call it the other side, the Paul Offits, the Anthony Faucis, all of these people, the pediatrician down the street, the pediatrician who I know has caused children to die at 6 months of age, babies. Dr. Stephanie Krishner, if you know her, she's from Tulsa. Her baby died. And that pediatrician says, oh, well, it wasn't the vaccines. It wasn't the vaccines. I don't know. I can't wrap my head around that. I really can't. That they just don't understand. Why is that?
Well, you're really talking about two different groups of people. You're talking about, you name some people that are so embedded into the system that their livelihood depends upon it. The Fauci, the Offit, things like that. So that's a money-driven greed type of group there. That's different than the other ones you mentioned. The other ones are people that they just don't understand innate intelligence. And because they don't understand innate intelligence, therefore they look more to educated intelligence to be able to make their decisions. And that is not how it works when it comes to the human body. So there's 4 types of intelligence now. There's innate intelligence, there's educated intelligence. Those are the 2 main. Now there's artificial intelligence, right? There's universal intelligence as well. But going back to innate, do you understand what innate, like real question, Cathy, do you understand what innate intelligence is and how it works?
Well, I'm guessing that innate is just basically almost like your common sense. Is that what you would refer to as innate intelligence?
Uh, kind of, but more like common instinct, or it's
Or
more
instinct,
that,
mama gut? Yeah.
yeah, yep.
Mhm.
Innate intelligence is the intelligence that takes you from two cells to a human. Like my wife's an amazing mom, but literally she didn't control any of that. That process and development inside of her was being driven by a very important, powerful intelligence. That intelligence is called innate intelligence. It's the same power and intelligence that makes your nails grow, your heart's beating, your lungs breathing, food's digesting. I breathe in this invisible air and somehow oxygen goes to every cell that needs it. That's innate intelligence. Birds are flying south, tulips come up in the spring, same thing. If you understand innate intelligence, you understand that it's perfect and it's never messed up, never has, never will. It's no such thing as messing up, doesn't exist. Every single thing with the body is an adaptation to its environment driven by innate intelligence, even cancer. And that's a whole nother bag of worms, but same thing.
Yeah.
And so if we understand innate intelligence and we know that it's always at work trying to keep us alive and trying to heal and try to fix everything because that's its only job, and it doesn't mess up, then we would realize that the only reason why we have a problem with our health is because something is interfering with innate.
Mm.
Therefore, I would never intentionally do anything to interfere with innate because I know that would make me unhealthy. And a vaccination is an interference to innate. It's an assault to innate. So is crappy food. Sorry. So is crappy food.
Yeah.
So is pressure on your nervous system. So is stress. So is screen time. So is all the negative thoughts. It's all interference to innate's ability to keep you healthy and healing at 100% all the time. So if they
Yeah.
understood innate, they would never make the choice to vaccinate. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I, there's
I
got to
know
be a
that was
better
a lot
word
to
for
say.
innate, like just plain stupid, if you ask me. So I don't know.
The-
You know, that's I just I don't get it. I mean I understand the importance, yes, of that instinct that, especially that mama gut, knowing what's right and what's wrong. But for people that just don't have it, it's just hard for me to accept. It really is. So
Well,
I don't know what
they're
else to do
also
for them.
persuaded by other people. And the
Yeah.
other thing is where do you put your trust? Do you put your trust in, first of all, in man? That's always a problem. You put your trust
Yeah.
in the medical doctor more than the intelligence that I just spoke about. Like if you're going to ask me, which one do you trust
Yeah.
more? This guy's 8-year education or the power that made your whole body from two cells? Gee, let me think. So
Yeah.
the fact that what happens is these people just trust the system, and that's why they make those choices. And then depending on what
Mm.
you watch, if
Yeah.
you're watching a certain narrative on TV and every single commercial you flip to is telling you the same thing, then you start believing that too.
Right.
So it's not that they're stupid, it's they're not grounded in the right thing. And then
Yeah.
they're easily persuaded because they're constantly bombarded with the lies.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's hard, I guess, I like the phrase, well, we will pray for them. And so, and it really, it's like, because I don't know how else to get through to them, except for, the people where something actually touches home personally or to somebody, in their immediate family or something like that. Then, which was the great thing about COVID. We knew that it was going to take like an adult mandated vaccine for some people to realize, hey, wait a minute, maybe this isn't such a great idea. And then once they figured that out, then it trickles down to, well, wait, maybe let's look at the childhood vaccination schedule. And, now, fortunately, people are now looking into veterinarian vaccinations, I mean, which they should. I mean, every little area should be, checked in, which, kind of brings me to the new administration. And we have Bobby Kennedy stepping in. What are your hopes and that he's going to be able to accomplish?
Great question.
And do you have hope for the medical community moving forward?
I have, yeah, I do. Let me get back there 1 second. Um,
Yeah.
if anybody's listening and you want the resource you're asking about, I created a website where I took each of the 16, we created a video that's 180 seconds or less with graphics and everything, just talking, basically completely telling you not to do the vaccine and with every single reason why.
Excellent. I will link that. I will link that in my resources for Mindset Kids and in this podcast.
Sounds good. And then I did what's called a manuscript, which is all the written version of that with all the stats, all the peer-reviewed research articles, all hyperlinked back to the sources. And then this
Great.
was back in 2019, and there's a couple of states that we've lost as far as religious exemptions. But I went through and I made a specific religious exemption for each and every state in the United States that accepted it. There was 46 of them at the time. So someone can jump on there and print off their exemption for their state specifically with their legislation built into it and fill that out,
Great.
have it notarized and turn it into the school or daycare, and they don't need to vaccinate their kids. They have a valid religious exemption already pre-done. They can just hand in.
Excellent. Excellent. Do
So
you know if
that's
Oklahoma's on that?
GoProject180.com.
Okay. Say that one more time. So we got it.
GoProject180.com. GoProject180.com. We did
Got it.
Project 180 because
Okay.
every video is 180 seconds. So everybody's got 3 minutes. Otherwise, they don't care. If you got a friend that won't watch a 3-minute video, they're not your friend.
Okay. I love it. I will post that.
About
So
Bobby Kennedy, first of all, think about this. You have a guy who has been in law for 40 years plus.
yeah.
He wrote a book. I mean, I'm sure he had a bunch of help with it, but the book about Anthony Fauci and the corruption and everything else is this thick. And this guy's been suing these industries and these people from basically here or from here. Now he gets to step in from here and be like, yeah, no, your budget, gone. Your job, gone. And no longer does he have to do any litigation. He just literally says, you're fired. Get out. There's the door. You're getting promoted. I like what you did. Your department gets money. Like he went from like arguing like a sibling to being like the parental figure, just done. And so I think that's
Yeah.
really cool.
He's now the godfather. Yeah. Yeah.
And then when what people are saying, like the critics are saying, well, he's skeptical about the vaccine schedule. Okay, what's wrong with that?
Oh,
And even
okay.
when they interview him, are you going to take away the vaccines? He's very good, and I watched the interviewer try to like trip him up. 26-year-old interviewer, probably, right? You think you're going to trip up a 70-year-old lawyer that's been doing this his whole life? I doubt it. So he keeps coming at him, and RFK is like, I don't want to take away vaccines. I just think
Yep.
they should be safe and effective, and we should decide
Yep.
whether they're safe and effective. I saw an interview of him before when he was still running for president, and it was before he pulled out of the race. But the guy asked him, what do you do the first week you're in office? And he said, well, the NIH has an annual budget of $47.7 billion. I would go in and I would take that away from them because they don't need it. Then I would pay a bunch of independent researchers and scientists to do studies and science on the effects of glyphosate, artificial coloring, artificial sweeteners, vaccines, all these things on the human body. And then once we have all the peer-reviewed studies piled up that prove that it's a problem, then I would just unleash the lawyers and they'll take care of everything.
Yep.
I thought that was a genius idea, strategy, and way to go about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, that's kind of what I've heard too is, Trump is against big government. He wants everything to go to the states. And, rather than just making any type of a mandate of vaccines or no mandate or whatever, support Bobby Kennedy for transparency, release as much data as possible and let that filter out. And, the people in the legal system are going to be the ones that make the changes. And I think it's fabulous. It's like you're sure you still have your choice, so nobody can complain about that. But now the transparency is going to be there and it's going to be where you can find it. It's not going to be, on page 1 million of Google. where you can't even find it, and so deeply centered that we'll be able to find it. And so I am so excited about that. Just I think we are definitely moving in a positive direction. We just got to keep up the momentum, and I'm excited about what's going to happen in 2025. So I think it'll be
Me
good.
too. I'm excited about 2025, 6, 7, 8.
Yeah. I'm excited about all of them. Well, what I want to do, I appreciate your time so much. I'd love to do this again. I am sure that we will be keeping in touch. And I'm going to link your information to our website so that people can also find it there. And I just want you to know that if you ever need anything, we are here to support you because I love your voice. I love that you speak out against vaccines. I don't think that there are enough of us out there that are really letting people know that, vaccines are not the way to go. There's so many other things that we can do. So if you have any other last words, I'd love to hear it.
I just think that Jesus is king, and my boy Donnie's back in the White House, so we're good to go. Um,
Yeah.
and I think if people understand that the body's designed to heal itself, and you stop putting
Hmm.
stuff in the way, then you don't get sick. And if that starts
Yep.
earlier with kids, then you don't have sick adults. And so
Hmm.
healthcare and the change in healthcare is that easy. Stop putting interference in the body and let it heal itself.
Yep. That's it. Absolutely. Amen to all of that. I appreciate your time so very much, Dr. Baker. And I'm also going to make sure that I have a link to your Instagram account because I absolutely love it. so,
Sounds
so
good.
you take
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.